What are you looking at, butthead?
You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
Hey, are we still doing this quarantine thing? This quarantine thing is still going on, right? It is if you're in California. It never ends. It just gets weirder and weirder and weirder, and what you can do changes, what you can't do changes. I think I've said it before, I'll say it again. It feels like the opening of Star Trek 4 when they're going to Earth and the automated beacon says, "Avoid the planet Earth at all costs." Well, avoid California at all costs. We're all crazy out here. We're all nuts. Anywho, had a weird thing this week. We saw on Facebook that a local comic book shop was having a store closing sale. Which, I mean, that sucks, right? Losing a comic shop sucks. Especially right now, you're like, oh, COVID this and shut down that, and they couldn't stay in business, and not a lot of people are buying comics anymore. And we'll go check it out. So me and Luna and Austin went, we drove down, and we waited in line because according to their specifications, they could have, I'm not kidding, 3 customers in the store at a time. If you counted the staff and the customers, that was their limit on who could be in the store. I get it. They're under these weird guidelines. I totally get it. Now, we were there on Tuesday or Wednesday, and they were saying that Friday was their last day, and that everything was 70% off, and that even the fixtures were for sale. Now, that's a big red flag for me because I am on the hunt for a comic spinner. I want one so bad. I want a comic spinner like I used to shop at when I was a kid. I would go to the grocery store, and they had that spinner, where all the comics are on it, and you spin the rack around, you look at the comics. So, for my... I hate the word man cave because I'm stuck in the garage. So for my Jeff garage, I want a spinner, and then I want to fill it with Star Wars comics from my youth. It's just one of those weird things you want to look at. It makes you happy when you look at it. So I thought maybe they have one, because they have done Kickstarter. There was a Kickstarter company, funded company that was going to make a replica of a spinner, and I think they were $350, which is more than I can spend on it. I'm at about 100. It's a metal rack. If you don't know what it's for, you don't care. For me, it's the coolest thing in the world, but can't get one. I keep looking at the swap meet and I have seen many wire racks, but not a comic spinner. So we went there, we stood in line. We were in line about 45 minutes to an hour. Because the people that had got there before us, they had been there in line for a long time. They were there 2 hours before the store opened. So we weren't there to rush anybody. Everybody's going to wait their turn. There was a lady at the door, a young girl. She was very pleasant. There were people also showing up to pick up their pulls, which is where you tell the comic shop, okay, I collect these issues. If you'll pull them and put them in a pile, I'll come buy them. So anytime somebody came to pick up their pull, no matter who was in line at the front, and it included us when we got to the front, we'd say, oh yeah, let the guy go in and buy his comics, of course. He's going to be in there 5 minutes. So I finally got my shot to go in. Now, there were 3 of us, but we're not going to get in the shop at the same time. We knew this. So I went first. I looked around. There wasn't a lot to buy, left in the store. The fixtures, and I'm doing air quotes, were mostly IKEA shelves. You go to IKEA, you can get one of these shelves for about $25. They wanted 10, and they were fully built, which takes a lot of the effort out of it, but I can't fit that in my car. So I'm looking at the stuff, and I can't really tell if it's the price marked plus 70% off, or it's already been marked 70% off. There was no signs. And God bless the woman at the register. The guy that was at the register purchasing, he was buying about, I'm not kidding, about 100 comic books. And she had to go and scan each comic book individually because of, I guess, their inventory system. But he wanted to check them first. So he's checking and handing one at a time. So it's going to take a while. I get it. I'm not going to get my questions answered. So I was in the store probably about 20 minutes. Finally, I'm like, I need to know because that's going to dictate how much I purchase. So I couldn't get an answer on what the pricing was because here's what happened. There was a couple of cases, and they were IKEA cases, the nicer ones, the metal ones. And there was some Iron Giant Mondo figures in there. So they went from the case to the counter before I even had a chance to ask about them. And I thought, did I miss them that quick? Because it's weird. There's nobody in the store. How could I miss? What did I miss? So, you know me, I'm not shy. I said, excuse me, how much are those figures? And she said, oh, they're on hold for somebody. And I said, oh, well, I'm here. No, they're on hold for somebody. The case was locked, and we didn't have the key, and it's been a few days. And I went, okay, that's kind of weird, but okay, I get it. They're for somebody else. Somebody beat me to it. I said, okay. I said, what about the items in this case? And they were by this, there's a couple of people, somebody in Jody, and they make high-end Disney collectibles. They're really nice stuff. And some of these were prototypes, and some were limited editions and one-offs. And I'm like, this is an impressive case of stuff, but nothing's priced. So I said, is there a price list for these items? And she goes, oh, those aren't discounted. I said, oh, well, I was just looking for the price. She goes, they're not discounted. They don't care that we're going out of business. They belong to the artist. I went, oh, okay. So, you know, at this point, I just got really irritated because I can't buy anything. Nothing is priced right. The stuff that I might be interested in buying, first off, she wouldn't even tell me the price. She said she might be able to help me in a few minutes, but that nothing was going to be discounted. And I thought, you know, just put a little sign. You know, hey, these belong to the artist. They're regular price. Sorry. Or just move them to the back. If they're not part of the sale, move them to the back. So I try to be really patient. And I never lose my cool unless somebody attacks me. Now, that's not going to happen here. But I just realized, like, I've waited all this time, and I might buy, I'm not kidding, like an action figure of Hit Girl from Kick-Ass. And I looked at it, and I said, I'm only buying this to make this trip worthwhile. I don't even want it. So I put it back, and I went to the door, and I said, Luna, Austin, do one of you want to come in here and shop? I'll swap out because I'm not going to get to buy anything. Because at this point, like, they're still at the register, like, comic, yes, comic, ring up. Comic I want to buy, comic, ring up. And I said, this guy's buying a lot of comics. And like, he can't just let it go. He goes, yeah, they're really discounted. I'm buying them. And I said, no, I get it, man. They're cheap price. I said, I'm not faulting you for it. I'm just simply saying the reality is you're going to be a while. And I'm just not interested in staying here another 40 minutes to buy an action figure of Hit Girl. I'm just not. So I stepped out. Luna went in. And Austin said, I don't need to go in at all. There's nothing in there I wanted. They had a whole shelf of Zootopia toys. Like, these are toys nobody wants. That's why they're there. I get it. And then we find out from the girl at the door that they're not going out of business. They're simply, on their behalf, their decision, they're just closing this store and opening a bigger one. And I was like, well, so you're just blowing out this stuff nobody wants, hoping to get some sales. There's no sympathy involved here because you're not going out of business. Nobody's losing their job. So, and I know this is just me, I just felt kind of duped. Like, they're going to try to sell me an IKEA shelf. There's stuff I can't buy. There's stuff I can buy I don't really want. But you're like, I should buy something because they're going out of business and they need every sale. That's not even the case. The guy's like, oh yeah, we have a bigger location we're opening. It's really nice. Now, you want to go? And I'm like, no, I don't want to go. No, I don't want to go. And no offense, like, it's a nice comic shop. I like to support comic shops. I'm totally into supporting small business. This just felt weird all the way around. So we didn't buy anything. What we did do is we stopped at a thrift shop on the way home. And this thrift shop's an anomaly They don't take credit cards. They're a cash-only business. Well, I don't always have cash. In fact, as a married man, I rarely have cash in my wallet. But Luna had cash from Starbucks tips, because they always give it to you in cash. $18. We had $18 to go in the store. So we go in, and I thought, okay. I said, Luna, if we find anything, you pay for it, and then I'll buy lunch, and that'll even us out. That's cool, right? Well, first thing we find a couple of action figures I'm interested in, maybe a DVD or two, and then Austin finds this really cool fox figurine. It's kind of a stuffed animal, but kind of not. It's not for children. It's more of a collectible item. It's vintage. It's probably from the 60s or 70s. It's a fox, and he's dressed up to go hunting, and if you lift his tail, it says made in Ireland. It's really cool. It's $8. So we loaded the cart up, and as we're walking, I said, no, we'll just go through the stuff, and we'll put back what we can't afford, and we'll make our final choice. Now, the fox is $8, so half the money right off the top is gone, that's great. So we're going through, and out of nowhere, a woman walks up, and she says, I've heard you guys talking. Here's $5. And I said, what? She says, you shouldn't have to put back your stuff. It's just $5, but it makes all the difference. I said, ma'am, we can't take your money. She says, it's Christmas. Take the money. And we took it, and we were able to buy everything we wanted. And it was just a really nice moment. Coming off of the weird cynicism at the going out of business, not going out of business comic shop, the moment in the thrift store really made the day. And we were really glad we stopped, and it felt really cool. And Austin has put that fox figure in a place of honor in his room. He collects foxes and thermoses and travel memorabilia, and it's all over the place. But that fox suddenly is like the centerpiece. So it was a really nice moment. And I could tell he really wanted it. So I was willing to put back pretty much all the stuff I had picked out to get the fox. So we didn't have to. I mean, $5 makes all the difference. It was a very nice moment, and we thanked the lady, and we're sending good thank you vibes all through the universe now. You can hear it's like Aquaman and the Super Friends would have those spiraling circles coming out of his head. So we're spiral circling all the good vibes into the world for that lady for giving us $5 when we really needed it. All right, let's get to it. So. Weird episode this week. I've watched some movies. I might get into them at some point in another show, but nothing of real note. Nothing that was like earth-shakingly good or earth-shakingly bad, I guess. But these are things that I believed as a child. And I thought it was funny because I said, I'm going to sit down and make a list of these and see how many I can get. And if I can get more than 5, it'll be an episode. And I ended up filling a whole page of nonsense. So in no particular order, these are the things that I believed as a child, that as I grew up, I ended up knowing better. But as a kid, you don't know. I mean, you only know what you know, right? Okay, so there was a candy in the 80s. They still make it. It's called Toffee Fay. You ever seen Toffee Fay? There are these little cups of hazelnut with like a nut in the middle, and you get 3 in a package. And the commercials in the 80s for Toffee Fay were Toffee Fay, it's too good for kids. And it was always a kid at the register picking up the candy bar right at the impulse purchase at the register. And some older person taking it and saying, now those aren't for kids, and holding it up like, I'm going to buy it. And I firmly believed as a child that if I tried to buy Toffee Fay at the store, that they would tell me no. I was convinced of it. I was totally convinced that I would get are you old enough to buy this, son? This is for adults. I thought it was like liquor, or cigarettes, something that they kept tabs on. I had no idea it was just a stupid marketing ploy. But that also led me into a couple of other products that I thought were just for adults. Toffee Fay was top of the list. But there was an ice cream in the 80s. They don't make it anymore. It was called Frugenglaja. This is the precursor to Haagen-Dazs. Before Haagen-Dazs, there was Frugenglaja. And Frugenglaja was fake German ice cream. You know, Haagen-Dazs is not from Germany. It's from New Jersey. And the gimmick on Haagen-Dazs and Frugenglaja, its precursor, was that they just used a lot of butter and cream. Like, a whole stick of butter is in each pint of it. And that's what makes it taste so good. You know, here's a little lesson that you learn later in life. Butter makes almost anything taste. It's terribly bad for you, but everything tastes better with butter on it. Oh my God. But Frugenglaja was ice cream that came in a plastic container. It was a plastic container with a domed plastic lid that clicked on. And the commercial for it, and again, remember, all I did was watch TV. I watched TV and played with Star Wars figures. So the commercial was a grown woman finishing off a pint of Frugenglaja as her husband is coming home from work. And he looks at her, and she's got like a guilty look on her face, and she goes, "I ate all the Frugenglaja." And then she pauses, and she goes, "And I'd do it again." And it's like, I don't know what was going on in that commercial. What I could tell mainly was that Frugenglaja was not for me. This was an adult item. They weren't going to sell it to me. And the woman in the commercial, now I didn't know this at the time, but you know, as a kid, anything about sexuality just confuses you. Like, why is she acting like a little child who's about to be punished? And maybe that's what the commercial was. Maybe she was looking for her husband to give her a spanking or something. "I ate all the Frugenglaja." And he looks at her and she goes, "And I'd do it again." And you're like, okay, I'm vaguely uncomfortable. And it's just ice cream. And the third one was they marketed lean cuisine to adults. Now remember, when I grew up, there was no kid cuisine. There was Swanson TV dinners in a metal tray, and they had, you know, meatloaf, Salisbury steak, and turkey with potatoes. There were only 3 meals. That's it. They came up with lean cuisine, and suddenly there were all these other flavors and foods in them. But they were marketed not only to adults, but to women. Lean cuisine was strictly marketed to women as some sort of diet supplement or something. Like if you just ate lean cuisine, you'd lose weight. But I remember thinking at the grocery store, like, again, they're not going to sell that to me. So if I walked up with a cart of Toffee Fay, Frugenglaja, and lean cuisine, they weren't going to sell it to me. And that's one of the stupid things I believed back then. Here's another one. This one has no basis in reality. I was preteen when they started airing those commercials for milk. You know, they might have had milk commercials prior to Milk It Does a Body Good. That was the Bain ad campaign growing up. Milk It Does a Body Good. Milk, drink milk. The first one was Milk It Does a Body Good. The second one was these kids would drink milk, and on screen they would get older, and as they got older they would tell you all the amazing things milk was doing for them. This is long before Got Milk. Got Milk was the 90s was Got Milk. So in the 80s they would always show. Remember, Got Milk was the idea that you might not have milk in your refrigerator and you should go buy some right now. But originally, the Milk Advisory Board, their commercials were simply, you should be drinking milk. Why aren't you drinking milk? You should be drinking milk now. So they'd always show people in close-up drinking milk on camera. And as they got closer, the camera got closer to their face, you could see the little indent from between the nose and the lip. I know I'm bizarre here. Hang on. You could see the indent between the nose and the lip. Now, I don't have that very prominent. Some people, it's very prominent. And I thought, because those people were in the commercials, I thought if you drank milk, it gave you that indent. Like that was a byproduct of drinking the milk. Like it's so irrational. But as a kid, you just make these weird, leaps in logic. And how weird is that one? I was firmly convinced. And because of that, I stopped drinking milk fairly early. And I don't think I've consumed a glass of milk. Conservatively, it's been 30 years. I don't have milk in cereal. I don't drink glasses of milk. I on rare occasions, have chocolate milk. I'm just not a milk guy. There's milk in Frappuccinos, but I don't think that counts. So, I have no calcium in my body. I'm like Mr. Glass. If I fall down the stairs, I will shatter into a million pieces. Because I have not had milk. Because I don't want to get that lip thing. But it makes no sense. Okay, next one is... I talked about this on the show another time, but it bears repeating. I didn't know when my mother would talk to people, she would always say, oh, he has a drinking problem. You know, she'd go, oh, that guy at church? Yeah, he has a drinking problem. And I'd go, well, we all drink. Why is his drinking a problem? Because growing up, there was no alcohol in my house. Not until late 70s. Certainly when the drunks moved in, I got an education in alcohol. And by 81, 82, I am aware of what a drinking problem is. No problem. I know everything about drinking problem. But back in the day, I didn't know what that was. You know, the guy has a drinking problem. Well, do I have a drinking problem? Because I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty all day. If I get a Coke, I drink the whole thing. That's me as a kid. The other one was... my mother would call people SOBs. Oh, him? Oh, he's a total SOB. And I'd go, now I can spell. I'm not stupid. Why is she calling that guy a sob? What does it mean to be a sob? Is it bad? It must be bad because she's saying it like it's bad. SOB. It wasn't until later that I learned what that meant. But I thought that was funny. There was even a movie called SOB. And I was like, now there's a movie about being a sob. I wonder what that means. Here's another one that's pretty funny. And as an adult, I finally had to look it up because I didn't know what it meant. Every sitcom, every drama in the late 70s, early 80s, they would say that if a woman was pregnant on the show, they would say, oh, the rabbit died. Did you know the rabbit died? Oh, about Helen? Oh, yes, the rabbit died. And that was a code word for saying that someone was pregnant. Like, why is that a thing? Why does saying the rabbit died, why does that mean you're pregnant? So I had to look it up, and it has to do with drawing blood from a pregnant, or a woman you think might be pregnant, killing a rabbit, opening up, I think it's ovaries, and putting the blood on the ovaries, and it changes color. And depending on the color, tells you if the human woman is pregnant. Either way, the rabbit's going to die. So it's a weird saying that the rabbit died means a woman is pregnant. It's got to be something from like frontier medicine back in the day. It's so weird, right? That is so weird. I've always had motion sickness. It's why I can't go on roller coasters. As an adult, it has manifested itself in debilitating vertigo. I have debilitating vertigo. There are some days I wake up and the entire world is spinning. The first time it happened, I thought I was having a stroke. I thought, this is it. I should say goodbye to everybody because I am dead. I've learned to live with it. But when I was a kid, anytime we were going on a road trip somewhere, I would get car sick. Dramamine I ate Dramamine more than I ate sweet tarts. But I had convinced myself that if I ate a lot of food, I wouldn't get motion sickness. So if my mother told us we were going on a trip, I would eat a lot of food. I would eat slices of bread, crackers, anything to fill my stomach up, because I was convinced, like, this will make sure I don't get sick. You only get sick on an empty stomach. Now, I don't know why I thought that, because the end game of motion sickness is you vomit up anything in your stomach. Maybe I was concerned that, I'm just extrapolating here, maybe I was concerned that dry heaves hurt more than vomiting real food, so I should eat real food in case I vomit so it doesn't hurt. I have no idea. Is that too much information? Probably too much information. Another one, this one's silly, is one time somebody gave me a bag of green plastic army men, the kind in like Toy Story. Not my usual toy, because I liked Star Wars figures. But somebody gave me a bag of them, but they told me, because the guy who gave them to me was in the service, that these were special green plastic Marines, that they weren't Army men, they were Marines, and that somehow made them better. So I can remember playing with those toys like they were special. And isn't that interesting what you can do to a kid? That if you attach importance and significance to an item, that does translate when the kid has ownership of it. You tell your kid, this is from your grandfather, it has weight. And even though it was a simple, probably $3 bag of plastic Army men, because the guy that gave them to me sat down and had the moment to say, I'm giving these to you, here's what they mean to me, so here's what they should mean to you, and that they did. So that was pretty, that's not a matter of a kid being dumb, it's just a matter of a kid being listened to and talked to in a way that they understand and getting the gist of things. I've always tried to do that with my kids. We never talked baby talk to our kids or any of that nonsense. We've always treated our kids as functioning people, and that has helped us raise pretty good kids. Here's an interesting one. I was always convinced from the age of 7 that Star Wars figures would be valuable. I just knew it. So, Christmas 1978, I got some of the first Star Wars figures I'd ever seen. I got X-Wing Luke, Farm Boy Luke. I got Darth Vader. I got a Stormtrooper. I got the Kenner Cantina Adventure with Blue Snaggletooth. And I remember, after that, every holiday, Christmas, birthday, Easter, anytime there's a gift involved, I wanted Star Wars figures. And I would open some to play with, but I would keep some carded. I had carded Star Wars figures, vintage, up until probably 2004. In 2004, I can remember we lived in Long Beach, and I still had at least 40 or 50 carded Star Wars figures, and many of them from my youth. Because as I got older, I just stopped opening them. I had at least 200 loose figures, so I just stopped opening them. And I can tell you that when there were lean times, and there have been many, I would sell those and keep the lights on, pay the phone bill. Those were insurance policies. I eventually sold them all, and that's just the way it goes. But I don't regret it, because when I needed help, those figures were there for me. But I knew from day one of collecting that those would be valuable. I remember we went to a carnival for our church at City Hall, and it was one of those booths where you throw a dime at a dish. And the woman running it with my mom ran it with this other woman. Her name was Fran Stutz. What a great name, right? Fran Stutz. Fran Stutz went across the street to Save on Drugs, and she bought a Darth Vader and a Han Solo, I'm not kidding you, 12-back. She put them at the top of the display and said, if you can get a dime in the top cup, you can get these figures and take them. I wanted them more than life. I think my mother just ended up buying them across the street for me. Because, the Star Wars figures at this point, $2. Carded Star Wars figures were $2. So I think my mother just bought them instead of wasting $3 or $4 on dimes. But even then, I remember looking at them thinking, I shouldn't open them. I should leave them. Now, I opened them because you have to have Han Solo. You have to have Han Solo because you have to have the Millennium Falcon. You can't have the Falcon without Han Solo, or Han Solo without the Falcon. They're a set. And me and my Falcon went on many adventures. Many adventures. But it's weird to think, how the toy market has changed so much, and how a 12-back Han Solo with the original small head versus the large head, that's like $2,000, $2 to $2,000. They're quite pricey, quite collectible, and I always knew that. Isn't that odd? Maybe I'm just weird. I think I'm answering my own questions. Okay, this one's totally bizarre, but it does bear talking about because I want my kids to have this information later in life. So when they find out that their father is being committed for insanity, they know where it all began. When we went to Disneyland as a child, we would ride the train. There were rides at Disneyland I wouldn't ride because of the drops. They'd have to bribe me to get me on Pirates of the Caribbean. The elevator of the Haunted Mansion made me ill. Like, I was a sad child who did not go on a lot of rides. But Austin is the same way. It's like looking in a time warp. But we would ride the train every time. The train was one of my favorite rides because you could see the whole park and you just keep riding. And I think part of it was my stepfather worked for the railroad. And he could show his ID and get us on the train for free. So to get on the train at Disneyland, you didn't have to burn a ticket. I think it was a B ticket to ride the train. But we didn't have to burn them to get on the train. We could just flash the badge and get right on. So the train was part of every Disneyland trip, sometimes more than once because there's no money involved. So I would ride the train a lot and see the Primeval World, the Grand Canyon, a Grand Circle trip around the Magic Kingdom. But here's what I believed as a child. When you leave the Main Street station on your way to New Orleans Square Station, which originally was Frontierland Station, but that's before my time. But between Main Street Station and New Orleans Square, you pass through Adventureland, and you're on the banks of the Jungle Cruise. And you can hear the noises from the Jungle Cruise. You can hear the boats sometimes. And I was firmly convinced that if I could just get off the train, I could hike into the jungle of Adventureland, and that there was a cave with a family of robot animatronic animals who were waiting to hang out with me. Why they wanted to hang out with me, I don't know. Why I wanted to hang out with robots that only had a series of motions that they did. And I mean, there's no such thing as an interactive robot back then. Like, I knew back then, like, the robot animals weren't going to engage with me. I was just going to sit with them while they moved up and down. The hyena laughed, the lion roared, or whatever it was. But I just knew it was out there. Now, little tiny me did not know that there might have been, 10 feet between the track and the attraction of the Jungle Cruise. So there's not a lot of quote-unquote jungle there. But when you're a kid, Disneyland's a lot bigger and a lot more amazing. And I thought, somewhere in that jungle, there's that cave. And if I could just get to it, those animals are waiting for me. What was I going to do with the animals? I don't know. Why were they there? Were they left over from the ride? Were they extra? I do not know. But they were waiting for me. Isn't that stupid? But that's what I thought. Okay, this one's really funny. No pun intended. I was convinced as a child, watching the Brady Bunch and hearing people laugh at the jokes, that if I laughed hard enough, other people would hear me in their living rooms. That the laughter, I didn't know what a laugh track was. But I was convinced that was other people enjoying the show. So my mother would come in sometimes, and I'd be right up at the screen laughing, as loud as I could. Hoping that those other families heard me and knew that I was enjoying the antics of the Brady family just as much as they were. I mean, that is priceless, man. Now, if you watch Brady Bunch, you're painfully aware of a laugh track because it's the same laughter every time. They mix it up every once in a while, but it's the same chuckles and guffaws every time. Okay, this one's funny too. Riding around in our cars back in the day, I just knew, convinced that the music that you heard on the radio was live. That every song being played was a concert they just happened to have somebody with a microphone at. I didn't know. This is probably I'm like 5 or 6. So not only am I really young, but really stupid. But I didn't know about records or tapes or 8 tracks or whatever. Just it's music, and when you go when you go to hear music, it's a live band. So on the radio, every time you flip the station, it must be a live band because there's a live guy talking. So the band must be live too. I just knew and they were talking about Led Zeppelin, the Eagles, Black Sabbath, Fleetwood Mac, that they just played concerts every day. That was their job, and that the radio aired the concerts. How funny is that? And how many times do I keep saying how funny is that? I also believe that animals spoke their own form of the English language. That when a dog barked or a cat meowed, they were communicating with other animals in ways that the other animals knew exactly what they were saying. I just knew it. I must have been 5 or 6. Like a lot of these just when I was 5 or 6, because after that you just life hits you like a frying pan to the head. So all of these fanciful notions of how the world might work, they all go away. They get beat out of you. But I just knew, my dog, when he barks to the dog next door, they're having some conversation. I don't know what they're talking about, but they're plotting something. And I remember eventually, I think I brought this up to my mother. It was like, no, the dog doesn't know English. The dog is just making noise. You can glean the dog's emotions from the way that they talk, but they're not really saying anything. I think that one hurt a lot. That one hurt quite a bit. The next one hurt even more. I've talked about how I was raised religious. We went to church 3 to 4 times a week. We went to the United Methodist Church in Norwalk. My mother was in the choir, and she was also the church treasurer. So we were at every meeting, every choir practice, every function, every event, and of course we were there every Sunday. And part of that was, we were at the Orange Circle the other day looking at antiques. And I saw an antique. You ever see something and it's it just unlocks a memory that you haven't thought of in forever? I love those moments. Because I'm so steeped in my own stupid lore that when I uncover something new, it's like an archaeologist, like Indiana Jones, chipping away at something, right? What I saw was this metal rod about 3 feet long that has a wick. It goes up and then splits into 2. And the one end is a wick, the other is a candle snuffer. And we use these at our church. And every Sunday they would pick 2 children to light the candles before the service began. So when it was my turn, it was an honor to do this. I would stand right before church began, I would exit back into the narthex, the lobby. They would hand it to me. I would stand next to one of the other kids, and one of the people from the church would use a lighter and light our wicks. And we would, when the music started, my mother in the choir, the organist would start, they would sing, we would walk down the aisle, lift up those candle lighters and light the candles. And then the best part is it had a little stick that you pull down and that extinguishes the flame. Then you would turn around and walk back out. And it would eat up a few minutes of not having to sit in the pew. Everybody got to see you do it. It felt like an honor. And then towards the end of church, you'd follow along in the bulletin. You'd see where the service was about to end. You'd exit back into the narthex, pick up that candlestick lighter again, and this time when you walked up, you used the other end to snuff the candle. Then you turned around and walked back out. It was all part of the ritual of church. And seeing that candlestick, I almost bought it. I didn't, and I'll probably regret that. But I didn't buy it. But just that moment of, oh my God, I haven't thought of this part of my life in 40 years. 40 years at least, I have not thought about lighting the candles or snuffing them out. And it just was really cool. But along with being raised religious, we were taught, now we would sometimes exit church for daycare, but that moved quickly into Bible school. And then I joined the young adults Bible study, and I studied the Bible. And then in the young adults, oh boy, they taught us Revelations. They had a tape that they would play of a renowned scholar who would read from Revelations, and then he would talk about it. So I was brought up to believe that heaven was real, that it was tangible, that not only was heaven real, but hearing about Revelations, that hell was real as too. This was heady stuff. And this lasted all the way up until I was around 12 or 13. But they drilled it into our heads that every action on earth had a consequence, and you had to ask for forgiveness so that you could get to heaven. And then in heaven you would join all of those that had gone before you. And it was real heady stuff. But you believe like that when you die, you're going to have like another house up there, and you're going to hang out with celebrities and all the people that have died, and that heaven's this wonderland. And your notions of heaven change as you get older. If you're ultra religious and you believe all that, Godspeed to you. I respect it completely. Everybody's on their own journey. And one time, I had to speak at a funeral. I think I've talked about it. Right after my mom died in 96, we had a rash of deaths in our family. Death was clearing our house and cleaning our clock, and he sure did. And I had to speak at more than one. And one time they asked me to speak. I got up and I said, I'm gonna talk to you about heaven, and how when I was a kid, this church that I am in now, taught me that heaven was real and that I could get there if I did things a certain way. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that heaven is not above the clouds with this big gate and somebody passing judgment on you to get in. It's not that. Heaven lies within us in the moments that we spend on earth. And I hate to get all philosophical on you, but it goes part and parcel with what I was raised to believe. I said heaven is in the moments here on earth. Heaven is getting up early on Christmas morning before anybody else is up, and reveling in that clear and pure moment before anybody wakes up or opens a gift or turns a lamp on or says anything, and you're in that silence, that pure bliss silence of what's about to become. Heaven is right before everybody piles in for dinner, when everything is filled with the promise and the possibilities of what can be, and nothing is ruined by a dissenter, or, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean by somebody who doesn't also agree in the stillness. I know I'm reaching here, but it's a hard concept to convey. And after I finished giving that speech, the pastor came up to me afterwards and he said, "You know, Jeff, are you sure you never got the calling to join us and be a minister, a pastor?" And I said, "No, I can't say that I have." And he said, "You have the gift." I said, "Did you write any of that down?" I said, "No, I just know how to get up and open my head and spill it all out." And he said, "Well, that's what makes you a priest, a minister, a pastor in the Methodist church." Remember, Methodist pastors went all over. They were the traveling pastors, and they spread the word around. Now, I was never in me to be religious in later life, you know. I just never saw that as part of me. I kind of envied those that did, because it's an interesting path to go down, but it wasn't for me. But I could tell when Pastor Ken talked to, he's the guy that married me and Rachel. He just looked at me and he was so like, what can I say to convince this guy to join us? And it's just not for me. But I did believe as a kid that I was someday going to be reunited with everybody that had passed before me, including my pets. I wish I could believe that now, but I don't. All right, let's get off that onto some lighter stuff. I believe that my movie stars would last forever. I just was convinced that the people I liked in the movies were always going to make movies. Mark Hamill's always going to make a movie. You know, Harrison Ford, that kind of was true. Harrison Ford has worked consistently almost every day. But it is weird when the stars that you like sort of have their moment and then they retire. And some don't ever come back. I find that so weird, you know, that the A-lister stars I liked, and we'll talk Mel Gibson, Steve Martin, Robin Williams, Martin Short, that the people that make these movies that you love are just going to keep making them, but they don't. You know, that's a bitter pill to swallow. Or when they do come back, you're like, oh my God, they got old. Never once thinking, well, look in the mirror, dummy, you got old too. I was convinced that some parts of the movies I was watching were actually real. Like, who would film all that? They had the wherewithal to film all that? Maybe they just let the cameras run. And that's happened in some cases, like in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, when Chekhov asks where the nuclear vessels are, the woman goes, I think across the bay at Alameda. Like, she was not part of the production. There's a urban legend that she just wandered through the set. I was convinced that that Fantasy Island was real, that if I could just figure out where to make a reservation, Mr. Rourke would welcome me, and I would walk right onto the Rebel base, and I could fly an X-Wing. I wanted to fly an X-Wing like nothing ever. Nothing else in my childhood. And that's knowing I had motion sickness. I said, it's okay, because I'm going to get in that X-Wing and fly. I just knew it. Star Tours was a pretty big deal to me when it opened in 87. Because that was the first time you could ever board a Star Wars vehicle and have a Star Wars adventure that felt like you were really going somewhere and moving. In a way that a roller coaster doesn't. Even Space Mountain, it's not the same. But I think that's why Star Tours, the original version, holds such a special place in my heart, because it was the culmination of a stupid kid watching Fantasy Island and dreaming of being an X-Wing pilot. And suddenly getting to walk onto a ship. There's R2. We're going to blow the Death Star up. That's okay. That one I didn't realize until this moment I actually had come true. Okay, there's only a couple more left, but they're pretty silly. That song, Same As It Ever Was, by the Talking Heads, Same As It Ever Was, in the lyrics he goes, and you may find yourself, you know, in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife, and you say, how did I get this? Whose wife is it? He does this whole thing, and as a kid I thought, that's the dumbest song I've ever heard. How could you have a wife and kids in a house and not know how you got there? Are you stupid? And I'll tell you what, man, there have been moments in my life, certainly during this pandemic and this quarantine where you're home more than you've ever been, where I have looked around at the life I have created and I have asked myself, like, how did I get here? How did I convince this woman to marry me? I'm a complete dork. And I have kids? I have 3 kids? I have a child that's 23 years old? Get out of here. I do? And 20? And my youngest is 15? When did this happen? And I'll tell you, it is so weird to have a moment like that. I can only describe it as the the push-pull, focus-pull from Jaws. You know, when Brody's looking at the beach and the camera does that thing where they're dollying out but zooming in? That's the euphoric moment of, how did I get here? How did this happen? How did I put all of this in motion? I'm a dumb guy who just plays with Star Wars figures. I can't have a wife and responsibilities and a job and kids. And I never would have believed that out of all the songs in the 80s, that silly Talking Heads, I never even liked the Talking Heads. Burning Down the House scared the crap out of me. I don't know what he was talking about. I don't want to burn the house down. But who would have thought that song? Because when I hear it on the radio, you know, I'm in the car with everybody. I go, oh, I like that one. Turn it on. They don't know that I'm having that moment of looking at them in the rearview mirror in the back seat. And like, how did those people get... I made those people? I'm responsible both for them being here and their upbringing? I don't know how I got here. And have we all had that moment? And did it take 30 plus years to realize it was going to happen? I find that so fascinating that I can hear a song that I always dismissed. And suddenly, because he does that arm thing, and of course he goes, there's water at the bottom of the ocean. Well, of course there's water at the bottom of the ocean. This guy's an idiot. Oh, wait a minute. David Byrne's not an idiot. He's able to articulate a bizarre feeling that is hard, almost impossible to articulate, where somebody just takes stock of everything they have and wonders, how did I get here? And more importantly, where am I going? You know, it's no coincidence he's the same guy that wrote, We're on the Road to Nowhere. Wow. I told you it was going to be a weird episode. I hope you're doing great in this pandemic. Today is the day. I am recording this on the day that the first American received the official vaccine. New York, it was a woman. It was a nurse. I also saw the woman here. She was a woman. She was a nurse in California. Get it? Pfizer shipped the vaccine to all 50 states today. Every state in the nation has the vaccine in limited amounts. And by spring, we're all going to have it. That makes me so hopeful that the end of this awfulness is in sight. I can only hope, here's my dream, that 10 years from now, I'm going to be in the car, my self-driving car that flies like the DeLorean, and the radio's going to come on and it's going to play the Talking Heads, same as it ever was, and I'm going to think about 2020 and the awful pandemic and all the people that we lost and all the people that are still here and go, how did I get here? How did I find myself in this moment? And 10 years from now, I will almost be 60. I'm going to be 50 next year. I have no concept of that. It just happened. It happened so quickly. Hey, I hope I didn't bore you. But it's a weird episode, man. Again, stay safe, stay sane, get your vaccination like I am. I can't wait to get it. Oh yeah, I'm Jeff Tucker, and this is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?
Well, that wasn't such a chore now, was it?